Hey everyone, Genome here with the next episode of Was It Good? Today, I'll be looking at a movie that came out in 1980, and many times today it's kind of hailed as some sort of milestone in at least comedic movie making. And that movie is Caddyshack. And this movie really needs no introduction, as you pretty much have to be living in a rock never to actually have seen this movie. And it is out on Netflix right now, so if you've never seen it before, well, there's your chance to go see it for free. So let's talk a little about the movie. The movie was directed by Harold Ramis. You might remember him as Egon from Ghostbusters. So not only was he an actor, he also got behind the camera every now and then. So this movie had an all-star cast, at least when it comes to some of the main roles. So we'll just go over a few of the actors for the main characters. We have Chevy Chase as Ty Webb. He's the rather laconic co-owner of the club, and is portrayed as something of a Zen golfer. Ted Knight as Judge Smales, the other co-owner of the club, or co-founder, should I say. And he is shown as the uptight, real stodgy character, kind of full of himself. Well, not just kind of, very full of himself. Michael O'Keefe as Danny Noonan. He plays the young caddy, the main, I guess, protagonist of this movie. And he's the guy out there looking just to go to college and get out of his house full of 20 kids with his, that his parents have. Bill Murray as Carl Spackler, the groundskeeper, or I believe he's assistant groundskeeper in this movie, and apparent war veteran with a serious case of PTSD. Cindy Morgan as Lacey, the, how shall we say, rather promiscuous granddaughter of Judge Smales. We have Sarah Halcombe as Maggie, the very, very Irish waitress and girlfriend of the protagonist, Danny. And last but not least, Mr. Rodney Dangerfield as Al Cervic. Basically, the premise of the whole movie is it's just a rather funny take on a rather uptight and unfunny place, the golf club, country club setting. It's about basically the young caddy, Danny, who is wanting to, once again, get his life started, go to college, so he winds up sucking up to a bunch of the people there in hopes of getting a scholarship to go to college because his grades aren't so hot. And it's just basically a part-time job for him, like basically everyone else that hangs out at the Caddyshack, And so we watch him work his way through, the merry band of almost mannequin-like characters because they're so stodgy and boring. But, and basically it's a story of, poor boy makes good, because at the end he's the big hero, but I won't ruin the whole movie for you. Needless to say, there's some golf played and there's a lot of humorous situations interjected in between. In all honesty, I really didn't care too much for most of the characters. They just come off as sort of a exaggerated caricature of a stereotype, They actually portray them as so super, super uptight and boring that it makes you wonder if anyone could really be that bad, but I guess it could be, especially if you're on the outside looking in. So, some characters that I did like were Danny, Lacey, the judge's granddaughter. Those two played their roles real well, actually. I thought, Michael O'Keefe kind of interjected a wiser than his years, kind of wry outlook for Danny.
I know I've made some mistakes in the past. I'm willing to make up for that. I want to be good. Very good.
And he pulled it off real well. I was surprised I didn't see him in much else after this movie. You think this movie would kind of put him on the map for as much money as it made. Cindy Morgan's Lacey, I think she did an excellent job actually of playing, the rather bored and full of ennui daughter of a rich family.
So what do you do?
I enjoy skinny skiing. To bullfights on acid.
Doesn't really have any, cares or aims in life, just wants to live in the moment. And she did it well. She played a real seductive part. And and there's the old legendary pool scene, but, I digress. So, those two characters did real well with what they were given. And I think they were much better than basically everybody else. Except the one character that brings this entire movie together, and if you only need one reason to see this movie, it's for this man alone.
Isn't that right, sir? The graveyard is 2 blocks to the left, okay?
Rodney Dangerfield. His version of Al Cervic is basically the best reason to watch this movie, because he just eats up the scenery, and every time he comes on the screen, the movie just jumps up in quality by about 10 points, you know.
Oh, this your wife? Oh, a lovely lady. Hey, baby, you're all right. You must have been something before electricity, huh? Okay.
Without him, this movie actually, I would think, would be pretty bad. And the scenes where he's not in it just tend to drag and meander around with not too much focus. But when he comes in, it is just razor sharp. And he has some great scenes and lines in this movie. It's almost like a walking version of his stand-up act.
Yes, give someone else a chance. Hey, you lucky devil. Come here, honey. Hey, loosen up, will you? You're a lot of woman, you know that? Hey, you want to make $14 the hard way?
You know, whether he's on the golf course with his specialized bag or coming to the country club for the little dance soiree where everyone's real quiet and muted. And he just comes in with his completely loud jacket and mismatching pants and shoes, and comes in with his crowd of drunks and just raises all kinds of hell in there and kind of tries to bring a little life to what he calls the dancing morgue. He's just brilliant, and this movie really kind of put him on the map as far as separating him from just being a stand-up comedian to actually being a movie draw. And it showed that he could actually get on the big screen and do it just as well, if not better, than what he was doing in his stand-up act. So kudos to you, Rodney. You pretty much saved this movie. Another aspect of this movie that some people seem to like is the groundhog, the little puppet that does humorous things all throughout. It didn't do anything for me. Maybe when I was a kid I liked it a lot better, but it just seemed kind of, I don't know, trite, for lack of a better word, I guess. I will say this, it was a nice touch to give him the voice of Flipper. That was kind of funny. Have him do that little fake dolphin noise. But really, he wasn't really necessary other than to be the motivating factor for the groundskeeper, played by Bill Murray. So, getting to Bill Murray and his role as the groundskeeper in this movie, Carl Spackler. You know, a lot of people give it a lot of praise and always bring him up. It seems like that he gets brought up first for his role in this movie, but, you know, honestly, I just didn't care for him all that much, and I actually found him kind of tedious. I'll probably be in the very vocal minority on that, but, you know, I just called him like I sees him, and he just didn't do anything for me. I mean, the scene where him and Chevy Chase are kind of trying to communicate in his little ramshackle shack apartment on the course is mildly humorous.
I'm an assistant greenskeeper. They say that doesn't mean anything, you know, until I'm the head greenskeeper.
Can you give me a ruling on this?
Well, sit down. Come on.
No, I don't want to stick to anything in here.
But I just didn't care for the character. So, and Bill Murray's usually rock solid and funny, but I just didn't like the character that much, and I think he gets too much credit. I will say, though, I looked it up a little bit, and apparently almost all of his lines in this movie were ad-libbed, which is pretty impressive considering some of the shots that he was in were quite long. So, you know, kudos to Bill to be able to come in and do that. But for me, Rodney Dangerfield was a much better reason to watch this movie than Bill Murray. So, characters and plot aside, do I think this movie was good? Well, the movie was okay. I seem to remember it being funnier than it actually is now. While it's not painful to watch or anything, you know, it's a pretty good way to spend 90 minutes if you don't have anything else to do. But, I mean, I can't really even go as far to call it, I don't even want to call it good. Other than Rodney Dangerfield, I really don't think this movie is all that great. Now, I don't want to come off as overly negative here. The movie's fairly enjoyable. I just don't think it earns a lot of the accolades that it gets from its biggest proponents and fans. It's just a little funny fluff movie. You have to suspend a little disbelief, but you know, that's the movies. I definitely think if you haven't seen it before and if you have Netflix, you should check it out there rather than buying it or renting it if possible. But if you're a fan of rather slapstick humor, I would actually kind of liken this movie to, like, say, a less clever Airplane. You know, there's a lot of the slapstick humor in there, but there's none of the kind of more subtle comedy points. And I'll probably review Airplane later, depending on the year it came out. I'm not sure there. But really, if you're any fan of Rodney Dangerfield, you need to see this movie. In fact, watching this movie made me realize it's like, you know what, I need to do a little series on Rodney Dangerfield. So in the future, and probably near future, I'm going to do a review of all those movies from the 80s when he was the biggest. Easy Money, Back to School, since I've already done Caddyshack, that's out of the way. And to see if his other movies hold up as well, because the man's just brilliant. If you haven't seen any of his stand-up act, you should check out YouTube and look for some videos of him on things like The Tonight Show, especially the ones with Johnny Carson. Yeah, he was hilarious in those. So anyway, movie was okay. Not good, not great, but definitely not bad. So yeah, give it a try if you got 90 minutes to spare. In any case, thanks for joining me for another episode of Genome Presents. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, please put something down there in the comments. Man, no respect at all. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and be sure to tune back in shortly as I release new content. All right, everyone, thanks for watching. This is Genome, out.